Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Global Footballer Podcast. I am Monish and with me is Deepak. Today we decide to talk about the UEFA Champions League groups. Deepak is going to take over from here. Over to you, Deepak.
Yes, Monish, the Champions League is back. I'm wearing Newcastle United's 125th anniversary special edition shirt, and Newcastle United are back in the Champions League. The last time I saw Newcastle in the Champions League, I was a tiny little kid. It's been more than 20 years, so it's been a long wait, but we're finally back. And on that topic,
Let,
coming
let
to the
me
Champions League,
interject here. Deepak was
yeah,
not
yeah, go
really
for
a
it.
tiny little kid. All right, he's not that young, which is very obvious. He's not looking older than his age. He is his age. Carry on, Deepak. You were a teenager then, I think.
Yeah, thanks for bursting my bubble, Monish. Yes, I'm a lot more older than I let myself believe. But coming into the groups of the Champions League, we have in Group A, Bayern Munich, your club, Manchester United, Monish, Copenhagen, and Galatasaray. I think it's a very underrated group. I think it's underrated how difficult this group will be, especially for Manchester United. What do you think?
It's not about. I don't think it's the difficulty of that group is underrated in the sense that Manchester United supporters know how difficult it will be. In one
Mm,
way, playing Bayern Munich right up first might not be the worst thing, because Manchester United right now is at its worst point. They have
mm,
lost most of their players. Bayern Munich is the most difficult fixture in this group. There's no doubt on that. I'm not saying
yeah,
that Copenhagen and Galatasaray are
Galatasaray.
easy teams. They are quite difficult as well. But Bayern Munich is a more difficult fixture, and playing them when United is going through an injury and various other crises is not the worst thing, because it is not. This is not the 3 points that they are going to be counting on. Just to be honest,
Mm,
Manchester United in the last few times they have reached the Champions League when they have qualified in the top four. Not every time they have managed to get out of the group. In fact, I think they two out of the last 4 or 5 times they have not been able to do it. So
mm,
considering all of that, it's not like Manchester United are definite people to advance from the qualifying group. The fans are much more realistic of Manchester United, at least are much more realistic about their chances. They don't expect to
yeah.
win the Champions League, to be honest. Uh, it is a difficult group. Bayern Munich is looking to be on song right now. Harry Kane is getting into his groove, and the team is doing quite well. Sane, I think, is also in form. Galatasaray has a couple of good players. I think Wilfred Zaha has joined them. Hakim Ziyech is with them, and they are a strong team as well. They've invested
Yeah.
quite heavily this season. Copenhagen
I
has gotten out of the Champions League group stage a couple of times, so not a bad team. So yeah, let's see. It's an interesting group. Also playing away against Galatasaray is going to be a tough ask, especially for this team. Let's see what happens. Over to you, Deepak. Who do you think is going to be advanced from this group?
Yeah, no, I agree with you that it's probably the best time to play Bayern Munich just because even if you're playing Bayern Munich at your full strength, you're likely to lose that game. So perhaps getting it out of the way when you're going through a difficult patch is probably the best thing. You can then play the lesser teams in Copenhagen and Galatasaray when you're back to form, potentially in the future. So I think it's not the worst idea getting it Bayern Munich out of the way. Um, Harry Kane coming back to Old Trafford, or I think Harry Kane playing against Manchester United in itself is going to be sort of a difficult thing for you to face, I think, because most Manchester United fans, and I think I include you among this, held on to some hope that Harry Kane is going to land up in Manchester United at the end of the transfer window. That did not happen. He went to Bayern Munich. He's scoring left, right, center. So I think it'll be a very interesting match. You're right, Galatasaray have a strong squad. They've done quite well in this transfer window. They've got Angelino, Davinson Sanchez, and they've got up front the likes of Dries Mertens, Wilfred Zaha, and Icardi. You wouldn't consider these players, perhaps except for Zaha, to be players that Premier League clubs playing in Champions League are sort of interested in. But these are all players who have experience at playing at the highest level, and they can definitely put up a shift if needed to.
No,
Yeah,
these players have quality, especially players like Icardi. They was very well sought after. There were some issues regarding his agent slash wife, and that was why
yeah,
probably he
personal.
never reached at a club of at the level of
Well,
a club
he
that
did play for
he
PSG.
did play for PSG, but that's when PSG had Neymar, Messi, and
Yeah,
everybody else, and Mbappe, and a lot of other
but
players. So, regarding Kane, I don't think any of the Manchester United fans were expecting him to come because I don't think they knew that
well,
Spurs
I guess it
under
was a
Levy would
faint
ever
hope
sell.
rather than
No, he
faint
wouldn't.
hope rather than anything else.
Yeah, he wouldn't
Right.
sell to Manchester United. That was the given. United would have to pay twice the sum Bayern offered to get Harry Kane. There was no
Yeah.
doubt on that. But yes, Harry Kane is the sort of player that Manchester United previously, at their peak, used to easily get in the transfer window. The top English players wanted to play for Manchester United, which is not the case right now, and I think United also know about it. It's a difficult group.
Yep.
It's not an impossible group to get out. It could have been worse, but it is a difficult group, and so it'll be interesting to see. United is not really in its best shape right now. Players are getting injured. Players are coming into the club already injured, and
Yep.
players are falling out with the manager, and a lot of other domestic abuse allegations going in with a couple of players. So United is not really in its best space right now. One
Yep.
way, this is a tough fixture. So let's see what happens. Galatasaray, I believe, should do well and hopefully get past Copenhagen. But can never say never. Like it's a fixture in which I think Galatasaray is slightly the better team. Moving on to
Sure.
Group Two, Deepak.
Yep. Let's swiftly move on to Group B. It's Sevilla, Arsenal, PSV, and Lens. I think this is probably more difficult again than it looks because Lens is quite a well-run club, especially in terms of their transfer dealings. And PSV, underrated, I feel. Arsenal, um, I expect them to win this group. They should win this group if they are going to be playing at the level of competing for the Premier League and so on and so forth. Sevilla have historically been excellent in Europe, but they had a bad start to the season. I think they're bottom of La Liga. I think it looks good for Arsenal, but the rest three teams, it's honestly anybody's game, I think.
The Now this group is difficult in the sense that you do not know who is the second best team, and Arsenal have been winning games, but not really convincingly.
Yeah,
Especially they're not looking like contenders, but they have the points, which is the most important thing. When you're not playing well, you still need to get the points, which they are doing right now.
yeah,
Uh, all the other teams are capable of easily beating Arsenal. Like it wouldn't be a major shock, especially in terms of beating Arsenal, because Arsenal's not looking like they are scoring that many goals. Probably they might be big wins in this group, but there can easily be shocks in this group.
yeah. There
More
absolutely
attack
can be.
minded teams, yeah, more attack minded teams. So Arsenal might stroll through, but there is always the possibility that the other teams can also get in. This, and Sevilla, as you know, has always had European exposure. They know how to win trophies in Europe, most
Yeah.
often the Europa League, but still they are a well run club. Lens is a well run club. PSV is always going to play the Dutch expansive style of play. So Arsenal is going to have to make sure they're not very complacent.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Sevilla cope in Europe because, as we said, they've historically done very well in Europe, but they've had a really poor start to the season. And if it were not for that, I would have just put them through for the knockout stage of the competition without much doubt. But it's just because they've had a really poor start to the season that we are worried about how Sevilla is going to cope, trying to get out of that pressure in La Liga and then trying to also be good in Europe. But yeah, I think Lens had a great season last year, and they've sold Seko Fofana, which we talked about in our Saudi Pro League video. But Beyond Seko Fofana, they still have some good players, and their recruitment has been some of the best recruitment in Europe. So, and they seem to be doing it again. So, it's going to be interesting group again. Shall we swiftly move on to Group C, Manish?
Yes, definitely.
Um, Group C is Real Madrid, Napoli, Braga, and Union Berlin. For me, there are two obvious winners here, which is Real Madrid and Napoli.
But
Union Berlin,
Napoli's start to the season has not been the most convincing. They have won a couple of good
yeah,
games, but uh, they have lost as well. I think they've lost and drawn a game already, and Inter Milan has started the season in full form. So
yeah,
Napoli is not yet at. I mean, I'm not sure how they're going to manage the Champions League and the Serie A at the same time, because there's going to be added pressure because they're the defending champions. Real Madrid are looking good. Bellingham is scoring, and the team is looking good. Valverde, everybody is looking very good. Real Madrid, I think, is definitely one to top the particular group. Napoli, as you know, are uh, they are a well-run side. They play good, exciting football. So, and they have a beast in Osimhen. Um, Apart
yeah.
from that, Braga and I mean, they again can pull off a surprise and cause an upset. So let's see how
Yeah,
this goes.
I think
You
Napoli have won two of the last three games, so perhaps it's not too bad. They placed fifth in the league now in Italy, 5 points from top. I think it might be difficult for them to try and compete for the league title again, especially with the additional burden of Champions League football to contend with. But overall, I think Napoli and Real Madrid are probably the two best placed teams to to progress from this group. I think Union Berlin again slightly underrated. They had a fantastic season last year, and because of that, they are in the Champions League this year. I think we can say that for probably every team in the Champions League, just because they clearly had a fantastic season last year, is why they are
they
in the
have to,
Champions League this year.
yes.
But yeah, they have some really good players, and they've signed Robin Gosens from Inter Milan, who I think is going to be a very capable fullback or wing back. They have Kevin Boland, they have David Fofana, um, and they have Brandon Aronson from Leeds. Uh, they've they've signed a few players, including this was probably a very surprising signing for me, Leandro Bonucci. He's left Juventus, and I think he's suing Juventus now.
He was
For
very angry at because he has been a fantastic servant to Juventus, to the
Yeah,
club. He has been the beating heart of Juventus. He has been with them when Juventus were dock points. He has always, I mean, it's
he's
sad
been a
if a
great
player
player for
is.
Juventus. Yeah, I
He
completely
has been a
agree.
great player per se, and he has played with Juventus for a really long time. And it's sad that things have come to this stage.
Exactly, it's
Uh,
very sad. I think that slightly negates his legacy amongst fans sometimes because at the end of the day, when you're suing the club, fans tend to get twitchy. Until then, fans were always on Bonucci's side, but when you sue the club for money, it sort of stops the club from spending that on players, and I think that slightly brings him down a peg. But nothing
Now,
to take
now
away from what he's
I'm
done.
sure that he must have thought this through, and he must be feeling uh, not,
Yeah, I'm sure he
he
knows
must be feeling
the
unfair
why
about it by
Baman.
himself. Yes, exactly.
Also, I'm sure he probably knows what he is for Juventus fans a lot more than we do. The emotion that exists between him and the fans. So I'm sure he has
Yeah,
considered that as well.
exactly. He must be
Um,
feeling hard done by. So yeah. Moving on, the next
the next
group,
group is
Deepak.
Group D. That's Inter Milan, Benfica, Salzburg, and Real Sociedad. I think
And
fairly easy group. I feel,
for
especially for
Inter
Inter
Milan,
Milan. For Inter Milan,
yes.
especially for
But
the
who's
other
your next
three,
pick?
I would have to say Sociedad. I think you might have a different answer, or do you?
Sociedad is a good team. They play interesting football. Uh, yeah, I think I would stick with them as well. But I'm sure Inter Milan is one to watch.
Hmm.
They have only come from strength to strength. They have started this season on fire. More importantly, the last game I think they beat AC Milan 5-1.
Yep.
Stefan Pioli is under pressure right now.
Yep.
After that big loss, I think he's lost five consecutive derbies. So Inter Milan
Interestingly, Zlatan
is.
Ibrahimovic is now with Pioli. coaching the team for their fixture against Newcastle tomorrow. Not looking good for us.
I was about to
We,
say that I'm sure AC Milan is going to come back stronger, and the
thanks.
next team, especially probably a team wearing stripes, is going to have a very bad time against AC Milan because they're just going to probably score
Thanks.
seven
We'll
goals.
reserve that for our chat about Newcastle and AC Milan when we come
Okay,
there,
so
Monish.
let's move on to the next group, Deepak.
Yeah, we can. Just so you know, Real Sociedad has one of my favorite players, Mikel Merino. Actually, I'm wearing his jersey. I don't know whether you can see Merino. Merino played for Newcastle and he was one of my favorite players ever. It's a signed jersey as well. And Merino now plays for Real Sociedad. If there is one signing that I hope Newcastle United pull off in the next year or so, I hope it's bringing Merino back to the club. I think that'll be a fantastic signing. Yeah, that's just a sideways story on one of my favorite players. But we can move on to the next group, Group E. It's Atletico Madrid, Feyenoord, Lazio, and Celtic.
All right,
What do you
and
think?
who are your picks?
So I'll have to go for Atletico Madrid.
I thought so.
Um, and again, Feyenoord, I think, play really good football. Lazio, I'm not entirely convinced. And their start to the season has been really poor as well. So I think I would put Feyenoord above Atletico Madrid. Celtic have always struggled in the Champions League. At least in the last few years, they've struggled in the Champions League. So I think I don't expect Celtic to progress very far in the competition. So it would be Atletico Madrid and Feyenoord for me. What about you?
Atletico Madrid, I know you're a big fan of Diego Simeone and his style of play and all of that.
I'm
Atletico,
not perhaps
yes,
a big fan of his style of play,
style of the passion that he
um,
brings.
but yeah, I'm a big fan of his passion. Yes.
Yeah, he's the most well-paid coach, anyways, in the world. So yeah, Atletico definitely they do have quality in their team as well. So
Hmm.
they should get through because this group is fairly easy. I think Lazio would rather be bigger rivals to Atletico's chance of topping the group rather than Feyenoord. Yes, they do
Hmm.
have a style of play, but will that work in Europe? I mean, I expect Atletico to actually beat them with ease. Whereas Lazio does have the quality in their team, even though they had not the best start to the season. So, yeah.
Yeah, Lazio probably has
Next,
the best squad amongst the other three clubs, but uh, I'm not
they
always
do.
convinced. But they've also sold Milinkovic-Savic, who was their beating heart, but they've got in Guendouzi. So um, I don't think he's at the level of Milinkovic-Savic, but
But
it's
but but
okay.
it's not been a bad squad in the sense that they
Yeah,
already had a
it's
decent
definitely not.
squad.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
it's
just
not a
that
bad squad, I
they have
guess.
lost their talisman, and yes, they are having issues. But we need to know that this squad has done well the last season. So yeah,
Yeah,
in a very good league, by the way.
just a shout out to Jakuba Minta, who plays for Feyenoord. He's on loan from Newcastle United. 19-year-old kid already tearing up the s- the Dutch league. So hopefully
Eredivisie.
can do it. Yeah, the Eredivisie. Hopefully can translate those performances to Champions League. And he's right winger, so that's literally where we need somebody. Um, he's very promising. Newcastle United having Dan Ashworth at the club always is a good sign that we'll always bring players in from unknown sort of places in the world and make them superstars. That's what he did for Brighton, and I'm hoping that's what he'll do for us in the long term. So, talking about Newcastle United, we have a nice segue into Group F that comprises of Newcastle United, Paris Saint-Germain, Borussia Dortmund, and AC Milan. Whom are your picks, Munish? This is the group of death that's been um, and I'm suppositives.
I mean, yes, there are three big teams here, three teams of Champions League caliber over here, and one team that's obviously going to finish fourth. So the
Uh,
fight between
Yeah, no, I
Borussia,
agree. AC
PSG,
Milan
and
will finish fourth. That's really horrible.
AC Milan. Yeah. I mean, the Champions League caliber team is definitely Newcastle United and not AC Milan. Like,
Yes.
definitely not AC Milan.
Uh, Thank you for
Yeah,
acknowledging that. Yeah.
yeah, I totally acknowledge it. So AC Milan, Borussia, and PSG. I think AC Milan and PSG are the teams to look out for. I think they will go through. Borussia Dortmund not looking very good this season. Nothing compared to the last season. So I think they are going to struggle. Newcastle United will be hoping to sneak in a Europa League place. You need to understand that AC Milan has the quality, has the experience, and they should go through. PSG again they might have lost a multitude of players, but they still have enough quality to pull off one-off wins against even the best teams.
Yeah.
All right. So that this is a cup competition. This is not a league competition. It's more about playing for a specific system, playing a particular style. Milan has always known how to do it. The Italian style has always worked. They always do better in Europe than people give them credit for. Even last season, Inter Milan did reach the final. So Italian teams do really well in Europe compared to what people consider them to be. And so it's a well-drilled team, very strong
I agree
team.
with you on one thing for sure, which is Newcastle United can't compete with any of the other three clubs just on squad basis. So we have a much poorer squad.
Dortmund is not very strong. I think they are
but
okay.
Dortmund has proven players like Sebastian Haller up front, Daniel Malin. I wouldn't say proven players at the highest level, but they have options. They have so many options.
Yeah, but nothing compared to nothing
uh,
compared to the teams that they had the last few years. So Dortmund
but
is
Marco
not.
Reus is still playing at the top. Julian Brandt is still playing. They've got
And how good
Emre
is Marco
Can.
Reus right now? See, that's what I'm trying to say.
Not at his peak for sure. Yeah.
Dortmund always had some young player who was on loan or who they managed to buy for cheap, and he was developing over there. They always had those talismans. At least first they had an amazing team. Then Bayern Munich, as they always do in Germany, gutted their team. They took in everybody from Dortmund, and some of them they even spoiled their careers. I would say Mario Götze over there.
Yeah.
So apart from that, then Dortmund got in. They started changing. They got Bellingham. They got Sancho, who played well there at
Haaland.
least, and Haaland. Now they don't have that sort of talisman again. Those young,
But
exciting players.
last year, this is the team that should have won the Bundesliga and somehow threw it away on the final day of the season.
Yes,
They've
but this
lost
team.
Bellingham since then, but decently strong team
That's a
otherwise.
big loss. That's a big loss.
Yeah.
Yes, they lost the Bundesliga in a season when Bayern Munich was trying to lose the Bundesliga. Bayern, they should have won it, and a better Dortmund team would have won the Bundesliga last year. So if there is a team that Newcastle should try to beat, definitely
Yeah,
it would
I
be
agree.
Dortmund, and then they
Probably.
sneak in a couple of draws here and there and just hope for the best,
I
depending on
think
the other
at
results.
home we will be strong. We have been strong against pretty much all teams in the league since Eddie Howe started. I think at home will be difficult to beat. Perhaps I'm not saying we're going to go out and win against Paris Saint-Germain. That would be foolish or unrealistic. But I think it'd be difficult for these teams to come to St James's Park and have a easy game at it. That's not going to happen. We are going to give them a tough game.
But then there are no
Mi-
easy games in the Champions
no,
League.
there aren't. Well, perhaps in the group stages you can expect a couple, but that's probably depending upon your group. And after that, that's also gonna not happen. I think I'm hopeful we might pull off an upset tomorrow against Milan, just because they are coming off a really bad, humiliating defeat in the San Siro against Inter Milan, and they seem to be losing their heads a tiny bit. And this seems to be probably the best time we can play them. We are coming from a
Or maybe
victory;
the
they are coming from a
worst.
humiliating bit. Yeah, perhaps it. I
Because
would rather
Pioli
face AC
seems
Milan.
pissed off, and I think it's
Yeah,
going to
no,
be
I agree.
difficult.
But I would rather face AC Milan in such a situation who's recovering from a really bad defeat rather than playing them when they are on top form and smashing clubs left, right, and center. I think facing them in that situation would be far more difficult compared to this one, in which they're trying to sort
Yeah,
themselves out
but
and
this
find
Milan team
something
has
new.
a lot of experience, a lot of Champions League experience. It's going to be very difficult.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think they have quality as well, not just experience. They have some
Definitely.
real upcoming players. They have some proper quality players. We did get one of them though, Tonali. So hopefully he can run the show tomorrow and show the fans. The best
Yeah.
part.
So let's move
All right.
on to the next group, Deepak.
Yep, sure. So it's Group G, which is Manchester City, Leipzig, um, Crvena Zvezda, and young boys. Apologies if I butchered that name, but this is, I think, going to be quite an easy group for Manchester City and Leipzig. What do you think, Punish?
It is Red Star Belgrade, or as they are known now. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but yeah, uh, they are no longer the team that they were when they were ruling Europe and being one of the best teams all around. So I think comparatively, this is an easy group to call. Normally,
Hmm.
Champions League used to have at least 4 or 5 teams that you would just completely discount. That would come from smaller European nations, smaller clubs, not having the biggest stadium. Sometimes clubs even pulling off an upset in their league and somehow getting through the qualifiers and getting into the Champions League. This year, that doesn't seem to be the case. You don't see too many of these smaller clubs. You don't see clubs that you're completely sure, like, okay, who are these guys? They are going to finish fourth. They will fight for third. That's not there anymore. There's no this guaranteed
Mm.
3 points in this. You don't expect a big club to go and, like, come on, I think they're going to beat them 7-8 nil. So this year the Champions League seems to be a bit different in that sense. Moving on
Yeah,
to the last group, Deepak.
yeah. Uh, yeah, Red Star Belgrade is the Anglophone name, which is far more easier for us to pronounce. And moving on to Group H, it's Barcelona, FC Porto, Shakhtar Donetsk, and Antwerp. I think again, Barcelona to go through quite easily. I would say FC Porto would probably be my next pick after that. What do
Exactly.
you think?
I would stick to those two teams. Barcelona looking good this season as well. Uh, they are they did manage to get a few players off their books. I'm not really, as yeah, being a Barcelona fan, I'm not really happy with. I mean, they're doing everything for the club, but they have not been very fair to the players. I think 2 years back, just free agency, they signed whoever they could get their hands on, and then
Yep,
didn't even register some of them.
yep,
Managed to sell a few of them on for profit. Some of the players who dreamt or still dream about playing for Barcelona, which is why they're getting said players, are obviously realizing they didn't make the right decision in
yep.
choosing to play. Yamin Lamal, that kid's looking fantastic. Uh, I mean, you could say you're overhyping him because he's playing for Barcelona and all of that, but it's more about him having the composure, the skill, and he
Yeah.
seems to be doing really well.
I think Lamine Yamal
However,
is obviously going to have all the hype around him, but does it seem similar to Ansu Fati,
I was about
how
to
he's
say
progressed?
that Ansu Fati never had like bad games. He was always creating chances. Sometimes not the best finisher, but he
Mm,
was always creating chances, always able to beat players, and he's not really had these bad games per se. The problem that kept happening was that whenever he was getting into form and scoring a few goals, he would get injured. The
mm,
second thing is Barcelona was not the right club for him to grow because they were struggling, and there seems to be this fight over the board and about the buying fees and trying to get superstars. So he couldn't get that chance to grow by himself.
right.
I think being in Brighton is not a bad choice for him, and let's
Not at
hope
all.
he
I
does
think
well.
it honestly probably Brighton play the closest type of football to Barcelona in the Premier League, sort of trying to pass it around, trying be in possession as much as
That
possible,
might be true,
be
but
technical
again,
play as
in La Liga, the type of opposition is also different. The sort of defending that happens in the Premier League is very different from the type of defending in La Liga.
I would
It
say
might
it's a
Im-
higher standard.
Exactly. So it might he might not be able to score that many goals, and if people
No.
are just going to weigh him, because in Barcelona it wasn't like he wasn't scoring goals; he was scoring some important ones as well.
Mm,
So here he's going to find it a little difficult to have that
no,
sort of
I agree.
impact in terms of numbers,
I agree.
and
But
he might
if
be
he
winning more
does
penalties
do
than
well,
scoring goals.
yeah, if he does do well though, I think it might be the making of him. Because if he were to really do well in Brighton over the next season, then that pushes him a notch further, I believe, in all this hype. So it might end in both directions. But yeah, for me, Yamin Yamal is obviously extremely talented and is a superstar perhaps in the making. But it all looks and sounds a little bit too familiar with what's happened with Ansu Fati. So hopefully it does not go down that trajectory
Yeah, but
and
Ansu
continues
Fati is
to
still
improve.
a fantastic player. There's no
No,
doubt
no, he
about
is.
that.
Yeah, I agree.
He
But
is, and
he's not. he was given number 10 jersey that was left by Messi. He's not lived up to that hype. And I think it's probably unfair to compare young players to Messi. Perhaps it was unneeded pressure that was put on him. He's
Yes,
not
because
lived up to that
Messi
level of hype.
himself
That's all.
had a breaking out a little later. He wasn't 16
Mm,
years old when he broke out. Yes, everyone knew he was going to be the next probable global superstar. Everyone knew he had insane amount of talent, but Barcelona had to even change their style. He got the preference and he got the push from Barcelona that he needed, because
mm,
Barcelona was capable of giving him that push at that time. They had other
mm.
superstars, they had really good team, they had a good coach, and the team was in good. It was in a good place financially also, I believe. Right now, that is not the case. Barcelona need to make sure that their results are up to the standard, that they actually progress in Champions League ahead of the group stages. So Barcelona are not in a position to blood young players. They need the wins.
Yeah.
This is not the old Barcelona team. They are no longer there financially, administratively. It's a very different Barcelona because of the position that they themselves have put them in. So yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
all right.
So that's it for all the groups in Champions League. Monish, who's your pick to win it? And uh, can you tell me what you think the final will be? Just a guess.
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised Manchester City again going all the way and reaching the final. I would say Real Madrid also are looking good this season, so I expect both of them to do really well. Deepak, are you
Uh,
expecting Newcastle United to reach the final of the Europa League?
Well, no. If I were to be expecting that, I would be a fool. But I can always hope. There's a difference between expectation and hope. But just being realistic, I think it would be yeah, Real Madrid. And you're right, Real Madrid versus Manchester City would be my pick too. My dark horses though for the title would be PSG, just because they seem to have gotten rid of Neymar. They seem to have gotten Mbappe where he needs to play. There doesn't seem to be that overlap between Neymar and Mbappe again. They've got rid of Messi, so it's clear who the main man is. And they've got proper centre forwards in Colomouani and Ramos, and they've got Asensio and Dembele on the right side. It's a proper team now, after many, many years. I think they will struggle the first few matches, but if they can get that cohesion sorted, I think they are going to be dark horses for the Champions League.